Hello, beautiful people. It's Lulu. Welcome to the Lulu Essie podcast, where we do things differently. No editing, no polishing, no fancy studio magic, just honest conversations that stay exactly as they happened. Before we dive into our final episode in the mental fitness series, I want to ask you something. Did you know that resisting your emotions actually makes them stronger? Today, we'll uncover why learning to embrace the dark days is key to true mental fitness. Maybe, just maybe, those shadows, those dark days we're all so desperately trying to outrun actually have something important to teach us. You see, for decades, I believed what most of us are led to believe, that mental fitness or good mental health means being on all the time, always positive, always upbeat, always in the light. And that belief nearly broke me. What I've learned through years of living this journey, through research, through working with others, is that there's a secret about mental fitness that very few are talking about. One that changed everything for me and might just change everything for you too. And the secret is this: real mental fitness isn't about staying in the light all the time. It's about learning to dance with both the light and the shadow. It's about understanding that our darker moments, our anxiety, our depression, the days where we can barely drag ourselves out of bed, our off days, yes, our struggles, they aren't failures of mental fitness. They're part of being gloriously, messily human. They're part of us that we need to embrace, not reject. And again, I learned this the really hard way. Back in my 20s, during one of my darkest periods of depression and psychosis, I remember days when the weight of it all kept me pinned to my bed. I was obsessed with getting better, cured, fixed. I thought if I just tried hard enough, if I just stayed positive enough, if I just pushed through, I could stay in the light forever. I really did think I could outrun this. Every time the shadows came, every time the anxiety started to take hold and the depression started sucking me in, I saw it as a personal failure. The harder I fought these emotions, the heavier they got and the more paralyzed I became. But here's what research actually tells us, and this blew my mind when I first learned it. When we resist our darker emotions, when we fight against them, we actually amplify them. Studies show that accepting and acknowledging our shadows can reduce their power over us. Isn't that amazing? Research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that individuals who habitually accept their negative emotions experience fewer negative emotions in response to things and situations that cause stress, leading to better psychological health over time. And this isn't just science talking. This is real life. This is my life. So what does it actually mean to dance with our shadows instead of fighting them. And when I say dance, I'm not talking about performance or skill. I'm talking about learning to move with whatever shows up, however it shows up. To be very clear, I'm just using dancing as a metaphor. And for those of you who know me, you'll know how much I love a good metaphor. Think about rhythm for a moment, even if you're someone who says you have 2 left feet. We all have our own natural rhythm. Sometimes we're in flow. Sometimes we're out of sync. Sometimes we can't seem to get into the groove. We feel uncomfortable and awkward. And that's just how it goes. That is part of being human. And the same goes for our mental fitness practice. Some days we'll feel like a freaking superhero, capable and strong and ready to take on anything. Those are our light days, our flowing days. And some days anxiety will be our companion with every move, right there with us. Some days depression will take the lead. Yes, some days depression will just want to dominate. It can be very extra that way. Some days we'll barely feel like we're moving at all. But here's what I've learned and what the research supports. The key isn't to judge ourselves or force the movements that aren't flowing. The key is just to stay in motion, however teeny tiny small that motion might be. But what happens when even the tiniest tool feels out of reach? Let's talk about those moments when even a 3-breath reset feels like climbing Kilimanjaro. When the darkness is so thick, so heavy, you can't even remember what light feels like. When depression isn't just taking the lead, it's sitting on your chest, making it hard to breathe. What do we do then? I know these days intimately, and I want to be very clear about something. These days aren't a failure of your mental health practice. They're not happening because you didn't do enough deposits or because you're not trying hard enough. Sometimes they just come. And when they do, we need different tools, different approaches. Here's what I've learned works on these darkest days. And again, as a point of clarity, these are for dark days, not days when you feel a little off or down. These dark days are usually rare. And before I share what helps me through these dark days, I need to be crystal clear about something else. What I'm sharing are gentle invitations that can support you, but they are not replacements for professional help. If you're struggling with severe depression or anxiety or other mental health issues, I really encourage you to reach out to mental health professionals. These tools are meant to complement, not replace, proper mental health care. Having said that, let me share what I've learned about surviving. And yes, sometimes that's exactly what it is, surviving these dark days. First, and this might sound really basic, but on those days when depression is sitting on your chest, remember that breathing is enough. Just breathing, nothing else. You don't need to fix anything, achieve anything, or be anything. breathing is enough. It sounds almost too simple to be true, but consciously connecting to our breath is a powerful, powerful tool to slow that spiral down. Second, and this was revolutionary for me to learn, having a simple protocol for these days can be a lifeline. Not a complicated self-care routine, but the absolute basics. For me, it's drinking water and making sure I stay well hydrated, taking my medication, texting one person, and I have a prearranged code with them. They know what that code means. And if I really need to, and my situation allows me to, pulling back my commitments to a minimum. I know this is not easy when it comes to work, and for those of you who have kids. So do what you are able and eliminate anything that is not absolutely necessary on these days. Think about one thing you could do today to support yourself. The key isn't to push ourselves beyond what we're able to do in the moment. The key is to honor where we are while maintaining the tiniest thread of connection to ourselves, to another human, to the world outside our window. I get that this can be complicated in and of itself for a lot of you listening, because of work commitments, family commitments, commitments to your kids, and on and on. So this can be messy. Just do what you can. There is no perfect way to do this, but there is a way to give ourselves some much needed support and care. And beauties, remember when we talked about micro deposits in episode 11 last week, those tiny, consistent actions we discussed, those might be your lifeline on these days. When we practice mental fitness, those micro deposits, those medium deposits, what we're doing is we're building reserves that can help us find our way during even the toughest times. But this is crucial. If those dark days still come, that is not a failure. Let me say that again because it's so important. If depression or anxiety or other mental health issues show up, despite all your deposits, despite all your practice, you have not failed. Think about it like this. Those mental fitness deposits we make aren't about becoming immune to darkness. They're about building resources we can draw from when we need them. Sometimes those resources help us avoid the deepest valleys, and sometimes they just help us hold on until the light starts to return. Both are equally valid. And once we've survived the darkest moments, how do we start finding our way back to the light? Let's explore what we can do when breathing feels a little easier and we're ready to take the next gentle step forward. Now, when we're ready, and only when we're ready, there are some gentle ways we can start moving again. And when I say when we're ready, I mean when breathing doesn't feel like climbing a mountain anymore. When that weight on our chest has lifted just enough that we can imagine doing a little more. Here are some practices that have helped me find my way back toward the light. First, and this might sound counterintuitive, but acknowledging out loud where we are, maybe to ourselves in the mirror, maybe to that trusted person we mentioned earlier, maybe just whispering into your pillow. Something as simple as, I'm really struggling right now, or this is a really dark day. Take a moment right now. Whisper to yourself, I'm really struggling right now. How does it feel to say that out loud? There is research that shows that naming our emotions can actually help reduce their intensity. A study led by Dr. Matthew Lieberman at UCLA says that putting feelings into words produces therapeutic effects in the brain that reduce their emotional intensity. This is called affect labeling. But let's keep this understandable and doable. And what is important is to keep it simple. Don't talk about timelines or get into a whole story about what you're feeling. Simplicity. Just name the feeling and leave it there. Second, engaging one of our senses, just one. Maybe the feeling of warmth, of sunlight on your face, through a window. Maybe holding a cup of tea and just feeling its warmth in your hands. Maybe listening to one song that reminds you of better days. Remember, we're not trying to fix anything here. We're just creating tiny moments of connection with the present moment, with ourselves. And third, this one was a game changer for me. Giving ourselves permission to move at glacial pace. And when I say glacial, I mean slower than slow. Do the minimum you need to do. Slow, slow, slow. And remember to maintain that tiny connection to yourself and to someone you trust. Sending one text message might be your only connection, and that is enough. The key here isn't to rush back to so-called normal, whatever that means. It's about honoring our own pace as we start finding our rhythm again. There's no timeline, no schedule we need to follow. Our rhythm will return in its own time, in its own way. And I know this can look very different for those of you with kids to take care of, maybe an aging parent to take care of. Find space in those situations, even if the space you are finding for yourself feels tiny. It helps. It counts. Do what is doable. This is where rules fall down, and I don't believe in them, strictly speaking, when it comes to this stuff. Because we all have very different lives and responsibilities, and I honor that. And beauties, this is where self-judgment loves to creep in. That voice that says, you should be doing more, recovering faster, get over it, enough already. Remember what we said about resistance making things harder. The same applies here. Fighting against your pace, comparing yourself to others, or pushing yourself to snap out of it, none of that helps. Comparison is so destructive and so damaging to ourselves. Please do not go there. This is your journey, and you get to do it your way. What does help is permission. Permission to be exactly where you are, moving exactly the pace that you can manage right now, and keeping that little teeny tiny space open for connection to your breath, to your senses, and to one person you trust. Now, I want to speak to those of you who have someone in your life going through these dark days. Maybe it's your partner, your friend, your child, your parent. I know it can feel helpless watching someone you love struggle. And I know the instinct is to try and fix it, to make it better, to find solutions, to make it all just go away. And also, be mindful of your judgment of them. Right now, whoever that person in your life is, they need your love and acceptance, not your judgment. Some of the things we say, trying to help, can actually make things harder for that person. Comments like, "At least it's not, ... or "Look on the bright side," or "You just need to ... These might come from a place of love, but they often make people feel more alone, more misunderstood, and more of a failure. Simply put, those sorts of statements come across as super judgy. Instead, here are some things that can actually help. Simply saying, "I'm here." Simply sitting with them in their darkness without trying to fix it. Just be there. Just listen. Asking, "What do you need from me right now?" And accepting if the answer is nothing or "I don't know." Accept that. Offering specific practical help like, "Can I drop off some groceries? Can I fetch the kids?" Most importantly, reminding them that you love them. "I love you" are 3 of the most powerful words we can hear when we are struggling and don't feel worthy of love. The next one I'm going to suggest might be a bit controversial. But try not saying things like, "This too shall pass," or "This is temporary," when you see that person sucked in by darkness. Those statements are true, and they are powerful, and I support them. But be mindful of timing. Timing is so critical. And ask yourself if your loved one is able to hear that right now. And maybe reserve those statements for when you see the darkness shift, even the slightest. And you know the person you love. Go inside yourself and ask, what do you think would be most supportive to them right now? Would it be sending a text, dropping off some flowers, sending them a song, going with them for a walk? And remember, please remember, if they don't respond as you think they should, as you'd like them to, if they're off, if they're unresponsive, which is very likely, do not take it personally. Just let it be. I know it's not easy, but don't take it personally. Just let it be. Don't overanalyze or think that you have done something wrong. Just hold that person wherever they are. And I know this part is really, really hard. And I also know it is possible. Give it a try. It is okay if it's uncomfortable and awkward and confusing and messy. It's going to be. Before we end today's episode, I want to share something really personal with you. In my darkest times, the most powerful support I received wasn't through words or advice. It was through presence. People who loved me enough to just be there. People who made me feel like it was okay to be exactly where I was. Their acceptance, their quiet presence was like a tiny yet powerful thread of light that helped me hold on. And beauties, this is what our entire mental series Fitness has been about. Learning to give ourselves and others that same acceptance. From working with Winter's wisdom to building our own mental fitness bank, to today's exploration of dancing with both light and shadow. It all comes down to this. There's room for all of it. The light days, the shadow days, and everything in between. And as we close the series, I'm planning what's next. And I really want you to be a part of it. If this mental fitness journey has sparked questions, insights, or challenges for you, if it's pushed your buttons, let's explore them together. Your voice matters. And your questions could shape an upcoming episode. I'd love to hear about your journey. What's working? Where are you struggling? What do you want to dive deeper into? Send me your thoughts on Instagram or email me at lulu@luluessie.com. Let's keep this conversation going and let's keep it growing together. This podcast is a conversation, not a monologue. Your stories and questions are at the heart of what we create next. I cannot wait to hear from you. If this episode spoke to you, or if you think someone you care about might benefit from hearing this, please share it with them. You never know whose life you might touch by sharing a little light today. And if you're enjoying this podcast, it would mean the world to me. It does mean the world to me. If you could leave a review, share it with friends, with family, on social media. Remember, your shadows don't make you less mentally fit. They make you human. And that humanity, with all its light and shadow, is exactly what makes you beautiful. And I mean beautiful. Be gentle with yourself. Trust your rhythm. Honor your pace. And keep that tiny thread of connection open to yourself, to others, to home. Your shadows do not make you less mentally fit. They make you gloriously, beautifully human. And as always, what comes from the heart reaches the heart. And today, like every day, this comes straight from my heart to yours.